Hey,
Everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Live podcast. My name is Roddy Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dane Young, Jake Roos, and of course, the Hall of Famer himself, Jim Donnan. The only reason everybody's tuning in to watch the show. I say that every week because people tell me that every week. They're like, hey, I love the show. Love to listen to Coach Donnan. I'm like, what about Jake? They're like, oh, yeah, he's on there too. Well, Dane runs it. They're like, oh, yeah, is he the guy with the beard? No, that's Paul Meharry. So no one that pays attention to any of us. Everyone's in here to check out Coach Donnan, and we accept that. That's fine. And I wasn't here last week. I hate that I couldn't be here, but it was the first time that my wife and son actually had spring break together. So we took a trip. I went out to Vegas and then went to the Grand Canyon. It was fantastic. And I must say, I really appreciate the fact that during the first time we actually have spring camp, and it's been a while, Anthony Dasher, Jake Roos, Patrick Garvin, Dane Young, Trent, all those guys covered UGA Sports with tons of breaking news. Dane had breaking news. Everybody had great news, great coverage. I can't tell you how much I, as the publisher of UGA Sports, feel so relieved that even during a busy week, I mean, we had, you had the breaking news, plus you had Pro Day. I was able to go on vacation. Okay. Now, I wanted to be in touch with the site, but I couldn't get any service where I was at. Point being, it's a relief to know that I left the site in good hands, and it probably ran a hell of a lot better than when I'm here. So I missed last week's show.
In particular, Roddy, I got rave reviews for my ad reads on last week's podcast.
Yeah, I missed all that. It killed me. But the good news was you guys had a hell of a show last week, and you covered everything. But I'm still catching up. So Jake, Dane, Coach, I need to know what I missed. There's been a lot going on, so I need you guys to kind of fill me in. I'm sorry for the folks who might see it as redundancy, but I mean, you guys had a show Wednesday, Thursday. Kirby came out and said some stuff. We had some insider notes from Saturday. So let's get everybody caught up on where spring is. And then later in the show, we're going to talk a lot about the big camp everybody went to Sunday. We got to see a lot of players out there. And before we get to any of that, I do want to mention, shout out to Aaron Overhead Doors, Academia Brewing Company, Athens Ford, for sponsoring our show, and of course Europie and our good friend Ronnie Brown at DR Construction Maintenance. But guys, catch me up on what I missed.
Well, I think the first thing and the most recent thing were a couple of injuries that happened over the weekend. I think as you were making a red-eye flight back to the east side of America. So Kenny McIntosh, running back in the rotation, he was third in carries last year on the team, does have an elbow injury. We broke that story Saturday night on UGA Sports on the Dog Vent, and then it was further confirmed on Sunday when Kenny McIntosh posted a photo to his Instagram story of him in a sling. Now, all I can tell you is that if your running back's in a sling and spring camp is not all that long to begin with, you can begin to put the pieces together. The way that we were told was that he is out indefinitely. I would probably say that means pretty much all of spring. That's not definitive. I'm not a doctor. I don't have that information for sure, but I'm just telling you the semester is short and they don't have many practices left. If he's in a sling, that's probably not the greatest thing for him. Another injury, defensive lineman, true freshman. It's Ingram Dawkins. He had a knee injury. If you remember when he came in, he had a knee scope as well. I think that was back in December. So those are two injuries that we've seen. Nothing too catastrophic for Georgia, but it is kind of commonplace to have those bumps and bruises as spring camp happens, and they just put the pads on, and so there'll probably be a couple of more of those too.
Yeah, I thought with the great foresight by Dane and Jake with the Pro Day coming on Wednesday last week, we waited and had the show on Wednesday night past Roddy's bedtime at 7, so we were able to have a pretty good inkling of what went on during the day through the SEC network. But just kind of the whole thing just kind of choreographed what Daniel Jeremiah said to us on this site, almost word for word, the way these guys projected, the way they did in their times and everything that, their character, everything about them. I mean, he had them to a T, and these guys performed pretty well. So that was a good point for us to have the show. And then Jake, as usual, came out with his deals telling us about who was going to commit, when, and everything. Mentioned that Starks was getting ready to come out this week, so I'm going to pass it on to Jake. I really can't recognize him there. I mean, he's got such a unbelievable beard now, but Go ahead, incognito, Jake.
Yeah, well, I'm just extra handsome this week, I think is what it is. I wanted to, no, we got Malachi Starks coming on Thursday, going to be at the Jefferson Civic Center. I believe it's 6:30. We'll be on the ground for that one. Going to be a big one to watch. And like Rowdy said, a ton to get to when it comes to this past weekend, man. We've been on the road the last 3 weeks covering these Under Armour camps. We did Miami, we did Dallas, 8-10 kids at each of those. So we've had plenty of news, but this past weekend, one of the most loaded camps I've ever been to, period. Just talent all over the field. Once it started coming, it didn't stop. We basically started interviewing kids at 11:30 and kept doing it until about 3:30. So a huge week on the recruiting front for Georgia, definitely with the Starks decision. And then also, another thing that I think happened last week and earlier this week, you're starting to hear a lot of guys pushing those visits back. Those commitment dates. Michael Williams, Christian Miller, two of those among them. Also, we're starting to see official visit dates set. Kojo Antwi, Denylon Morissette, Oscar Delp, Addison Nichols. These guys are all setting official visits. So the word on
Tyler Booker too. He's got his to Georgia.
Well. The word on the street is that OVs are coming back. We'll see. I mean, there's not been any definitive word yet from the NCAA, but I think that the feeling between recruits and between schools is that it's on the horizon. So a huge week.
Yeah, I think talking to the coaches around the country prior to this show, I asked, I think 5 different head coaches about what they thought was going to transpire after May 31st. And they said, hopefully, unless something really drastically changes, they're going to be able to come in for official visits after June 1st. And they're going to be able to have 10 camp days, which they can use any way they want to. Now, obviously, a kid can't come in for an official visit during the camp, but between the camp days, and the official visits, they'll be a little bit more normal, but the coaches certainly can't go out and visit with them. There'll still be a dead period as far as coaches leaving the campus, but anything's better than nothing. Some people are scheduling those official visits, trying to get groups in together of guys that, are really committed together or committed as far as liking each other and thinking about going to the same school. And then the other thing that I'll do is catch you up on a little spring practice with my 1.5 minute. Put the timer on me there, Dane. I'm going to give you a 1.5 minute timer right here. We made a move there at start position, looking at Anderson because his ability to run like he can, cover the pass fairly well, but really stop the run. And see if with his speed and quickness, if he can adjust there. Another big move is looking hard at Beck at quarterback. I think Beck's made some dramatic improvement from what I understand. Really got a good feel for the quarterback position. We talked about Carroll moving to defensive back. He's certainly challenging Kimber for one of those corner spots. As far as the backup, I think right now Speed and Ringo are leading the way there. Safeties, we know about Smith and situation with Scene there. A young man that's coming on strong, a walk-on, Dan Jackson, really knows Kirby's defense, and that's what he likes back there. He's a smart, articulate kid. He's not great speed, but he really knows what to do, kind of a quarterback back there. Look for him and Major Burns really to be the backup safeties at this point. Offensive line continues to just be a Donnybrook of really good players, and they're all fighting for positions just to get reps. Our third team can play with a lot of Conference USA teams right now, and maybe some and for sure some lower dweller SEC teams. You got guys like Willock and Blasky and those guys, really good young players. Ratledge has moved into guard as a second team right guard. I think that's something that's going to help us down the road. He's going to be challenging Schaefer. Truss continues to fight with Broderick Jones, and then Mims is looking at this guy that's going to come on strong. I don't know how much time I got left. I got so much more I can't tell you what else.
we can go longer than 90 seconds, Coach, if you want. It's okay.
I mean, if you got more, let it ride.
Yeah, well, we got an hour, so it's
no. I mean, that's just talking to a few people and listening and everything. But I do feel like that the competition for our defense that we talked about last year was going to be a hard sell for our offense because our offense just didn't have the firepower coming into fall camp or the working together. Same thing true with the defense. Going against Pickens and Burton and Smith every day is going to help these corners. It's really going to help them. I mean, I hear Smith continues to show everybody his taillights, and I also hear I sound like I'm on Entertainment Tonight or something. I don't mean that, but I understand that Arian Smith is actually running some outdoor track to help our track team. And can you imagine if he gets on that relay team with bowling, that's going to be strong. So, and Kirby had said that he was going to let him run track. I didn't think he was going to do it this first year, but the kid's far enough along in what he's doing, and it doesn't having coached track guys here that I mean, football players that played track or ran track. I think it's certainly compatible, especially with the off days and all that they can train. So more power to him, Arian. Get over there and help that track team who finished very high, both men and women, in the indoor national championships. And shout out to Coach Jack Barley for finishing number 8 in the top 10 in the women's, and thinks he might get a top 5 coming up here in the men's this week up in Greensboro. You know, so I think I'm pretty much done for today. So I'll see you.
Coach, you had a lot there, but I want to follow up on something that Kirby Smart had said, because you told us last week that Adam Anderson may be getting a look at Star, and then sure enough, Kirby Smart says the same thing. I think it was the day after our show last week. But Kirby Smart said it in a way that I had not really considered, or he was saying that the star position really is just another outside linebacker. So it's just kind of adding to that skill set. So then I start comparing in my head, all right, what did Mark Webb do last year? And can Adam Anderson do that better, worse, just differently? So can you kind of give a bit more context to how that star position in Georgia's defense really is another outside linebacker?
Well, everybody that listens to our show or listens to the watch along show has a pretty good feel for our base defense, and our base defense has gotten away from having 2 outside linebackers and having 5 defensive backs, which that 5th guy is an outside linebacker, but he's called the star position. So when he comes in the game, he assumes that. So from if you just go backwards here or forwards, any way you want to look at it, Anderson starts out as a strong side linebacker, but when they need to go to the calls, which incorporate a star, he is the star essentially by being the outside linebacker. So he just moves to that position a little bit wider and plays in the slot. Maybe not as much man coverage, but still he's covering the same territory, just a little bit wider as far as his responsibility. And he can still come off the edge and blitz. We saw Lorenzo Carter, Floyd, guys like that do that in the initial defense here. So if you just think about it, the star position originally is an outside linebacker. So when the star position becomes a defensive back, he becomes a nickel guy, a 5th defensive back. But Anderson just becomes move on out. And that's the way to get your best players on the field. And if you're playing against a team that's not that great throwing the ball and really uses a lot of slot receivers to hurt you, that's an unbelievable guy to play out there with that wingspan and his movement and everything. Just a brilliant tactical move by Kirby and Coach Lanning. I think it's brilliant. Get your best 11 on the field.
I guess what is the downside though? You know what I mean? I'm always looking for what the trouble is.
Here comes Mr. Negative. Have fun.
you knew it's coming, but it can't always be positive. So what's the danger?
The downside is this: if you want to incorporate the 5 defensive backs, that's not a strength of his. He's not a defensive back per se. He certainly got some skills enough, like an inside linebacker can cover guys, playing man-to-man. He can do that out there, but he can't cover a guy down the field, running routes, running a 7 route, a crossing route, stuff like that. At this point, although he'll get better, but he'll be golden holding them up with his arms and everything and stuff like that. But I'm going to give you a little bit of upside first. The upside is you don't have to substitute, and they don't know what you're doing defensively. Oh. And the fact it'd be like if you got Cook in the game at running back, and then you shift him out to wide receiver like we did against Alabama. and he went 80 yards. The surprise element was there because they didn't think we had 5 receivers in the game. He became one. The same thing would be true with Anderson. He can still play, rush the passer from an inside position or an outside position, play the zone coverage from an outside position, and you're not subbing. When you put the extra guy in there, you're basically saying, we're daring you to run the ball against a 6-man box, so to speak. Right. Maybe I didn't do that very good, but I was trying to.
Well, and one thing that can get exploited in those situations is a guy like Kyle Pitts, who's just an incredible athlete from a tight end spot, to where there's not a matchup on the field that's going to be great for a guy like that. And not even a guy like Mark Webb, who was a former receiver and he was a physical tackler. I think that's where some of that star position can get exploited if you've got a really fast tight end that lines up closer to the middle.
And this is no knock on Brini, but if you compare the two athletes and their skill sets, Anderson has done more and played more and has been more efficient than Brini. So if you can get him on the field and maybe run a little bit different scheme without taking away too much, it's definitely to your advantage. So that's what they're looking at. But Brini brings you a guy that's a lot more accomplished covering the pass. And so you just got to look, give and take a little bit. But I like the thought process there.
I also like the idea that Kirby was asked about, what do you expect to see from Nolan Smith? And he said, look, everyone thinks with Azeez Ojulari gone that the job is Nolan's, but on a lot of our practices, that's Trayvon Walker is kind of taken over for, he is the Azeez in our defense. And we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about the, where some of these guys gone. One of the guys we were mentioning was we're waiting on Nolan Smith. He came in with all the hype. We knew he was young. We knew that some guys just have to wait. But now you have a situation where I remember us discussing, well, will it be Nolan? Will it be Trayvon? Will it be Adam Anderson? This kind of just accumulation of talent, all trying to get into just a few spots. You got Jordan Davis coming back. You've got Devontae. You've got you got to replace Malik Herring, and so everyone just assumed that Trayvon's going to be the next Malik. And I think the idea of having Trayvon Walker on the field and Nolan Smith and Adam Anderson and Jordan Davis. I see where you're going with this, Coach. Getting your 11 best guys on the field. That it was something to do with the offensive line. Give me your 5 best.
Don't forget Carter either. So
he's okay.
With your base of Carter and Walker and Smith and Anderson and Davis, you got guys right there that walk in any team in any place in the country and have a really good chance of being very good players for them. So, and in my minute rundown there, I didn't get the chance to get to. I'm hearing that Trayvon Walker just knocking them naked out there, just really having a good spring, and a guy that we forgot about this into his 5th year, but is solid and knows what to do. Robert Bill is a good handyman type guy that can help you in a situation where, spell Smith, if all of a sudden Anderson's playing a lot more in the whole starting defense there as the outside linebacker or the star. Every person's got a name. You got the Will, the Money, the Sam, the D tackle, 3. But the star position really is not a defensive back. Okay, it's a deep outside linebacker that becomes a defensive back when you go to nickel, and then you go to dime, you take another guy out, and he becomes the guy. So all that jargon or whatever you call it is certainly something that our fans like to hear. But basically, we got the base defense, and then you go from there. And the other thing is just and Kirby brought it up, is offense's efficiency level is a lot better because the kids know the verbiage. They know where to line up without having to think about it. They got their signals down. I mean, they're thinking about how to do it instead of what to do. You know what I mean? That really makes a lot of difference when you're running a play if you're confused. And I think just the fact they've had the whole year together, and they've got an established quarterback and a guy that's been a quarterback here in Bennett and Beck, and really helps you far as getting them lined up and doing the things that they need to do. So
that's good stuff.
And for last but not least, Washington and Brock Bowers just when's our place going to open up the East?
Massachusetts East next month here in April.
That would be something that would make my mouth water about those guys.
That versatility though that you're talking about, Coach, on defense, that's so key. I mean, LSU in part won a national championship because they wouldn't allow other teams to substitute. And so if you can react to that with the same guys on the field because they can do a lot of different things, that's really helpful for a defense.
Yeah, and no question, if you look at the way Kirby set the defense up last year, I mean, Dan and Kirby and Schumann, they set it up based on the fact that LSU and so many of these teams hurt us. And we got hurt by Florida and Alabama, no question, but they hurt us with inside the 20, particularly 2 years ago with the quarterback movement. If you look at Hurts, all that stuff. So they put Anderson in there as kind of a spy guy in our dime package where he could line up there and kind of mirror the quarterback and still play pass defense if the guy decided not to run. So he's got that capability. If they got that much confidence in him to line him up back there and spy a guy, he can certainly play out there. The tendency is to look like the prophet of doom over there on the right and find out what the downside of the guy is instead of what the upside is, which the guy 6'6", got a wingspan of like Wilt Chamberlain and can really run. I mean, he can really run. I mean,
we mentioned a few weeks ago that Kirby Smart was actively calling out Adam Anderson in a practice, telling him how you're my fastest guy, and didn't hesitate to say that in front of the other outside linebackers and wanted him to be even faster. And we've had the discussions about how we want to see Adam Anderson because, I mean, I remember Jake and I going to camps and seeing this young guy, and we're like, we were saying he's underrated, and then he got up to the 5-star status and we're like, this is what we expect from this guy. And we've had a lot of fans kind of asking where he's going to be. And I just think this could be the breakout move. This could be his money year, Exactly. I'm really excited about this move. So
I remember walking off the indoor practice facility during the spring practice prior to the workouts. They just had the indoor workouts and I was over there his freshman year, and he and Justin Fields challenged each other to a 40 right in front of about 10 people, and there wasn't a gnat's ass between those two before they finished. I'm telling you, it was like wire photo, and we just saw on Ohio State's pro day where Justin Fields ran 4.45, and Pitts yesterday, you mentioned him down at Florida, 6'6", 246, ran 4.46. He's going to go in the top 5. I promise you, he's going high.
Yeah, it'll be well deserved. I do want to touch on the quarterback situation. I know Kirby was mentioning them being light years ahead. You mentioned Carson Beck making a move. Everybody wants to know how JT Daniels is doing. And I thought that Kirby last year saying we didn't even know who JT Daniels was last spring. So there's a lot to talk about there. But first and foremost, I want to get to I mentioned our friends over at Athens Ford. They've always been a big supporter of our site. Right now, if you go to their website, they're going to give you a $250 off coupon on any vehicle. You just basically give them your name and email address, and say, hey, I want the $250 off. So they'll knock that out for you. I did notice, because I've always said, look, you need to get one of those Ford certified pre-owned vehicles. And they've done a new thing where they actually have 2 classifications of certification. So you have 2 basically levels. There's now gold certified and there's blue certified. Now the blue certified are basically cars a little bit older. They're up to any make and model up to 10 years old with less than 120,000 miles, but they go through a 139-point inspection. Pretty sharp. 139 things that have to be exactly the way they want it. 24/7 roadside assistance, 90-day, 4,000-mile comprehensive warranty. So you can have 4,000 miles, make sure there's anything wrong with it. Great vehicle to get. I recommend those highly. And then there's the gold certified. That goes through a 172-point inspection. Think about almost 200 different things they check out on this vehicle. And it comes with a 7-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, 24/7 roadside assistance, 12-month, 12,000-mile comprehensive limited warranty. Point being, the 2 levels of certification you can get from Athens Ford on their certified pre-owned Fords is just phenomenal. You can go with the one that matches your budget. If you want to get an older vehicle, save a lot of money, you're going to have one that's gone through a 139-point inspection. And if you want to get something newer, it's going to have a 172-point inspection. It's going to feel brand new to you. And Clark Howard will be happy that you didn't buy a new car right off the bat and you let someone else take that depreciation. But I'm telling you, if you need a good vehicle, check out our friends at Athens Ford. I know a lot of people are looking for new vehicles. They should do that. And I do want to mention our friends over at Aaron Overhead Doors, because sometimes you might need a place to put that new vehicle. Well, let's say your garage door's messed up. They can fix it for you. They can also do a lot of commercial work. I was looking through their services offered, and commercial stuff. They do rolling steel doors, security gates, car wash doors, loading dock repairs, loading dock installation, high-speed doors. I didn't even know that such a thing existed. They do sheet doors, rolling steel fire doors. So if you have a commercial business and you need a garage door, or loading dock worked on, reach out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. And of course, if you have a residential issue, you need a panel replaced, or you need your torsion springs done, do not screw with torsion springs. They will kill you. They are very, very dangerous items. I've seen that firsthand working on garage doors with my brother. So do not screw with the torsion springs. Let a professional come in and do that. But if you want a custom garage door for your house, or your openers, your garage door openers messed up, or you just want to install one, or you want to install a new one, you want one with all the new bells and whistles. They have the light and the motion sensor, and they sense your car coming up and automatically do it. Check out our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors, and they will take care of you.
Jake, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who did the ad reads better, Roddy or me?
Oh boy, that's tough, man. Don't make me pick between
who pays the bills?
Better job.
Yeah, I've never given you $1, I don't think. So you better pick Roddy.
Nah, we know I got this stuff down. I talk about these guys because I believe in them. But no, Dane, you are the pro. You are the guy that did TV for years. So I'm just a jumped up photographer hack. Speaking of people who are getting better or trying to get better, I thought that Kirby Smart had an interesting comment when he said that the QBs are light years ahead of where they were last year. He said didn't even know who JT Daniels was. They're settling in, and I thought, Coach, you had a very interesting thing there about Carson Beck. Now, the scuttlebutt on Carson Beck was that maybe Georgia missed in their evaluation, but all of a sudden you're telling me he's gotten better. And I have heard that from a lot of people that Carson Beck has looked a lot better. So all of a sudden you have Carson Beck, you have JT Daniels, and we saw how successful he was. We know that Stetson Bennett can sling it, and he beat ranked SEC teams. I know a lot of people got mad at him for the second half of that we have to get injured against Florida, but the guy is absolutely a winner. We're not hearing a whole lot about Brock Vandegrift, but he's the 5-star on campus. Georgia goes from what felt like a dearth of quarterbacks to all of a sudden an overabundance. Can you talk to us a little bit about the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I don't know that we're ready to get the red badge of courage out here in that situation. I'll just say that in Beck's defense, he comes in here highly recruited, and he was in a situation where you made a quarterback coaching change. You brought in 2 transfers that they really looked at hard, and there was a lot of no spring practice for him. So, that was once fall started, they really had to get ready to play. So he didn't get quite the looks with the better players, which you got to do at quarterback. So, he's got a big arm, and he's really intelligent. And I think the move toward more of a pocket scheme as compared to what we've done in the past, although we were a pocket team under Fromm, but some movement. He's very comfortable taking the snap and lining up in the gun or moving from under center, and that's more of his cup of tea, and he's blending in there, and he's got the year of being here, even though they didn't do a lot on the field. They did a lot, with the Zoom and all that. And you got a coach like Todd Monken, who's very got a good feel for coaching quarterbacks, and Buster Faulkner off the field doing the same thing. And the fact that he had an existing relationship with Coach Monken, because Coach Monken's son played Little League Baseball with him, and he already knew him, and he knew the family. And there's a lot to that as far as feeling comfortable and understanding that this guy's going to go, based on prior stuff, is going to go that extra mile with you and bring you along. And, you know, we're a win now, baby philosophy. And as soon as a guy doesn't step out there and knock you dead, you have a tendency to, you know, find something that's going to happen negative as far as leaving. But all I said, I don't want everybody to say, hey, Don said Carson Beck's the man. I just said he's really being a lot, from the words that I've heard, he's looking a lot more consistent. He feels comfortable in the system. And the stuff that we do, he can do. You know, he can catch and throw and distribute the ball. So they're going to give him the one thing that we have the luxury of that we did in the fall is we got a given with Bennett. We know what Bennett can do, and he doesn't need a lot of reps. And so some of those reps will go to Carson and to Brock to see how they do, knowing that once fall camp starts, we can get Bennett back in there. I don't want to take anything for granted for Bennett, but he's not going to beat out JT at this point. So let these other guys see what they can do.
I will say one thing I want to touch on, and this is for everybody. If you've heard, we got a question. One of the freshmen that we haven't talked about much, Brock Vandegrift. Anybody with some insight on Vandegrift and how he's kind of flourishing over the course of this spring and his early enrollment?
Well, here's what you know about the guy. Unreal competitive nature. I mean, he just very jump in line, grab the bull by the horn. He's always been the guy, in a smaller school, big fish in a little pond. But now he's here, and he's still got that same kind of aggressive attitude, and I think that's going to help him. He wants to do well, but there's also that kind of a young Colt type guy that's real frisky and thinks he can throw the ball through any defense. I haven't seen him do that, but hopefully in a week from now they'll have a scrimmage and we'll be able to check it out. But I think with Brock is just nurture him, bring him along, know that he's very athletic for sure, but he's got to do the first part of being a quarterback here is the passing part, and he's got the arm and the accuracy, just learn who to distribute the ball to, and he's just going to have to work to get to that second position because he's got a guy that's played here for 3 years and been out there and knows every kid on the team and every kid likes him, and Bennett, defensive players too. And then he's got a new guy in Beck that's been here a year on him. So we'll see how that goes. It's not like he can just walk in there and be number two, but I feel good about Beck. Beck, and I feel good about Brock. I feel a lot better about Beck now than I did in the fall, but I think didn't get to see enough of him early. But as the fall progressed, he got a lot better, and he just didn't go over there and sulk, saying, hey, they brought two quarterbacks in on me, blah, blah. He believed in Kirby and he believed in Munkin, and they're bringing him along. And
that Colt and that Colt and gunslinger mentality. I hope that it's always my worry that when that happens, that young quarterbacks can come through that and remain really aggressive, because I think that was the biggest difference in Georgia's offense with JT Daniels, is that he was willing to throw the deep ball all the time. He was willing to try to fit things into small windows. And Georgia had been a bit more conservative offensively with some of the passing, and some of that was wide receivers are a little bit better, protection's a little bit better. The roster is just better than it was, in the early years of Kirby Smart as a whole. And so I think the offense has seen some of that. I think one thing you can argue, though, is that there's not a player on the team that probably had to overcome more in terms of the pandemic and no spring practice last year than Carson Beck, because he didn't get all that time. He didn't get those reps. And so he really had to kind of hunker down, as they say around here, and kind of find his spot on the team and get that time and the ability, because Todd Monken was going to be working with who his quarterbacks were. It ended up being 4 different guys. And so I think, Roddy, that's maybe why you feel some stability almost, is because last year was so unstable. But what I would tell you is that there's still so much to be proven. And that starts with JT Daniels, that the competition gets a lot stronger starting in game 1 than anything he's seen while in Athens.
Yeah, and I would bring out this little nugget here. Everybody bragged about the fact that when JT, I'm talking about our coaches, when JT wasn't in the mix, he went down to the scout team and he worked hard, and he went against the number one defense, and he got his skill set back. And when he had his knee cleared, he was ready to go. Everybody remember that?
Yes, sir.
Well, once he stopped doing that, then Beck started doing it. So the last few games, Beck was able to get down there instead of just standing around watching Bennett when he was a quarterback, watching JT. Now he got to go down there and do the same thing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, plus for the bowl game. So I would say those 5 or 6 weeks really helped Beck.
No, I think you're right. And when you're talking about the young guys and having to make that adjustment, I thought that Kirby Smart made a very interesting point when they was talked about the freshmen. He basically pointed out they're not strong yet. They're not ready to take on Justin Schaefer. They're not ready to take on Jamari Sawyer. They're not ready to take on Jordan Davis. You got those 16 early enrollees. And this past Saturday was the first time they put on pads. Now they had the shells on earlier, but helmets. But this past Saturday was graduation day. It was welcome to the SEC, welcome to the Team Young Buck. And they put on pads, and I was told, from some folks that were there was very, very physical practice, as obvious. We saw a couple injuries come out of it. But that was a situation where those young guys are actually, Kirby said, earlier in the week, it looked like the Combine Olympics out there. Everybody's in helmets and shorts, and everybody looks fantastic. Then the pads come on, and guys start slinging around and the pads start popping, and things change. So I think this is huge. I know we've said it before, but I just think it's such a big deal for the 16 early enrollees, ones who are going through. Some guys are recovering from surgery and such, but a lot of those guys getting that chance to be out there and grow. And as Dane pointed out, when you didn't get that chance last year, some of those freshmen were a little bit behind, trying to do everything via Zoom meetings and, not really getting that chance to do anything until fall camp. And then, new offensive coordinator, new system, it kind of put the offense a little bit behind the 8 ball. And I do think, Dane, you're right. JT Daniels does have a little bit to prove. Everyone just assumes that he's got it down, and we've heard good things about how he's looked in the spring so far. But he didn't go up against the greatest competition those last 4 games. Plus, a lot of people that were banging on Stetson Bennett and trying to think of the some of the criticisms that came out. Remember, Stetson for a while there didn't have George Pickens. When JT Daniels got the start, George was there, and George has been fantastic. We've also heard good things about him in the spring. I think that, Jermaine Burton's also getting to he only got to rep at 1 spot last year, and now he's getting 2 as Kirby Smart had mentioned recently. He's working at the X and Z. He's getting to do both. So the wide receiver group is going to be improved. The quarterbacks are going to get a lot more experience, but I'm very excited to see what they can do against better competition. And that's, again, I'm not trying to put down the last 4 teams that Georgia played, but it's not like they were playing Alabama again. It's not like they were playing Florida. So I think that this bodes well for Georgia, but that game right off the bat against Clemson is going to be we can talk about this all day, but that will be the tell of the tape, how Georgia lines up against Clemson and how they handle that.
Well, Roddy, you mentioned those.
I want to make here about practice because I want to interject this. I told these guys I was going to stop talking, but I want to say this.
Yeah.
In the old days, you used to have 20 practices, and you could go out in full pads the first day. Now you've got 15 practice, of which 2 are in without pads, and you can only have 3 contact scrimmages, and you can only have contact so much in the other practices. So the way teams work now, and let's just put like real quick, if I'm the offense in the old days and we didn't have pads on, like in fall camp, you have to go 3 days without it. Then the offense would just go down there and work against shields. The defense would hold shields. You'd run the plays, and you just try to get your timing down. The defense would have guys down there, managers, trainers lining up, and they would just be practicing lining up and getting set and everything. Now, with the way it is, offense and defense line up against each other, run each other, scout teams, and mimic each other, but they're going full speed, but they don't have pads on. But you get an evaluation of their knowledge of assignment and their technique, but you don't see the actual blasting and hitting like you would when they have pads on. That's why Kirby makes the point. Once they put the pads on, it's a lot different. A guy can look better lining up there and not having to block a guy as far as getting the movement, because the defense, if they jack a guy back and knock him back, Kirby pulls them out right away if they don't have pads on, because that's the way you get somebody hurt.
Yeah.
Or you say like a D lineman comes in there and holds up his hands and knocks down a pass. Happy high school hero. Hey, the guy can't chop you. He can't get your hands down. Of course you can get them up there when you don't have pads on. So all that's working against each other, helping each other out. But once you put the pads on, that's when you evaluate the guys. I hope I got that across.
Roddy, one of the things you had mentioned was the early enrollees. And Jake, I wanted to ask you about this. I almost texted you when Kirby said it, because he mentioned Chaz Chambliss by name. And you covered him a bit more than, I mean, I don't know as much about him as you guys that cover recruiting day in, day out. So Chaz Chambliss, for him to get a shout out from Kirby Smart in that news conference, to me, that says that's, he's putting in great effort, obviously. But just tell me more about Chaz.
Yeah, Chaz, I think a guy that people sort of had mixed reviews coming in. Would he be able to kind of make an impact, I guess, from the beginning? Because, he comes in, he's maybe a little bit thin for that outside linebacker position, but a guy who, what he's well known for is he drinks black coffee in the morning and he carried a lunch pail to school. I mean, he's like the definition old school guy, right? So, I think that stuff probably rings very true with Kirby as what would with any, I think, head football coach. But, Chaz is a guy who you thought maybe kind of coming in, be an impact maker, especially on special teams, just because of the great effort that he gives. A guy with some speed, can he crash off the end? I think really the big question is, would he be a guy who's standing up a little bit more or playing with his hand in the ground a little bit more? Obviously, he's kind of in that hybrid role, I think, going forward, but a lot of it will depend on, I think, his weight when moving forward.
I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see him.
I was just waiting for Roddy to fawn over his wrestling ability, because there's a wrestler on the team, Roddy just has to send it back to the mat.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's I still want to see the Austin Blaskey, Chaz Chambliss / Clay Webb wrestle off.
And they better get it in before Dylan Fairchild gets on campus.
Yeah, I mean, oh geez, and now. Watching some of the Blaskey clips and watching that kid, hearing that he's working at center, I'm very excited to see what he could do. But again, Clay Webb was just a ridiculous wrestler in his time. And again, actually, when we had the last chance, I got to ask Matt Luke when we've had our first access to him. I asked him about wrestlers on the team and how those guys played out. How much did he like that? And he's like, oh God, the hand fighting with those guys is just great. I'm thinking, yeah, because almost everything is all the locks you're doing and all the tie ups and all the stuff like that. So it's good. But Chaz is one of the guys I'm excited about. But I can't help but every time I think about the 16 freshmen, I go straight to Mims. I'm really excited to see what Mims can do. I'm chomping at the bit for April 17th to get here. I want to see spring practice. I want to see this kid in Georgia gear lined up at right or left tackle and see what he can do. And that's not to take anything away from Broderick Jones or Xavier Truss. Remember, we barely got to see Broderick Jones. He got injured. We saw him kind of coming on towards the end of the season. We were just this excited about Broderick Jones last year, and I'm not unexcited about him. But the stuff I'm hearing about Amarius Mims, I'm just
Mims is just a different size. I mean, that's
and Devin Willett too.
Broderick is not small by any means.
No,
don't get me wrong. He's a giant man in his own regard, but Mims is like block out the sun here. I mean, it's just different. I mean, when you see that kid walking around in pads, he's the guy you would go out to, I think, Georgia practices, even as a freshman right now, and say, yeah, that guy, he's a player, obviously. I mean, because of that size, that immense size, he's easy to spot.
It used to be when you walked around on campus, you could spot the basketball players really easily because they were so tall. And so, you'd walk around, there's Trey Tompkins over there and you're like, okay, yeah, he played basketball. Football, it's a little different sometimes because they're all different sizes. But yeah, you're right. You see Amarius, you can be like, oh, yeah, he plays over there. He's he's not at Tate as often as he is at Sanford Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of kids going to Georgia think Shaquille O'Neal's taking classes there. I said that about the guy. I mean, we can waste every show talking about what the guy's going to be like, but you can just start. You can mark it down. I mean, it's just what a player. And the thing about Blasky and Willock and so many of these third team offensive linemen, who are they going to move ahead of? Are they going to move ahead of Ratledge and Clay Webb and Van Pran and Broderick Jones? I mean, how are they going to move ahead of these guys? I mean, those are second team guys, and then they got to move ahead of that. I mean, realistically, we got a team that's not very experienced there, but then they got to move ahead of Salyer and Schaefer and McClendon and Erickson. I mean, that's a good situation to be in.
No, I think you go back to what you said a couple weeks ago, Coach. Sometimes you just got to wait your turn, you know, and we get excited about the freshmen. And again, we're talking about Broderick Jones. Hey, Jake, what was he, the number 1, number 2 offensive tackle?
Number 1 to Tate Ratledge, number 2.
Yeah, so Georgia has a number 1, number 2 offensive tackles. I'm talking about a guy who's a year after them. I shouldn't be, but again, we heard when he arrived on campus how he looked. We heard in the offseason stuff, some of the stuff that's going on. And now that they're actually lining up in in helmets and pads and spring practices here, I have heard nothing to change that forecast. So again, Kirby mentioning Chaz Chambliss, I think it's great. A lot of people, knew that he was good, but they didn't quite see, weren't sure where he factored in. But I'm like, Kirby, go back to talking about Mims. I'm very excited about this young man. And I also want to know a little bit more about this Lavoisier Carroll switch. Coach, you mentioned that this might be a possibility a month ago, a long time ago. You mentioned Lavoisier Carroll among the people who may get a look when Georgia's trying to fill in at that cornerback spot. You said, hey, maybe they look at somebody else. We saw Mark Webb switch over from, wide receiver to defensive back. And you mentioned Lavoisier Carroll is a guy who could do that. And sure enough, now Kirby Smart confirms that is an experiment they're trying. And I want to get y'all's thoughts on Lavoisier Carroll working at cornerback.
Yeah, from my standpoint, he's got the speed that Kirby wants back there. If you look at the way Stokes ran, you look at the way Daniels ran, the way these other guys that we're losing, we got to have guys that have the ability. You're not going to line up and stuff these wide receivers. If they beat you off the line, you got to have catch-up speed, and he's got that. He's very similar composition to Kimber, maybe a little taller and maybe a little faster, but that's two good young guys that to work with, and of course a little bit stronger and more physical guy with similar speed, freshman is Nyland Green. So 3 freshmen there that really going to be good. And then the redshirt freshman, Ringo. I mean, if you want to get excited and get really excited about the other element, Ringo does about the same thing for me that Mims does. I mean,
yeah.
We haven't had a guy that looks exactly like his makeup ever. I had a guy, you weren't here last week, but I went over there on Tuesday just to pick up something there for my foot. And I just walked out there when they were stretching and then left. And I had a guy that was a coach that doesn't coach anymore, but was just over there. And he said, "Do you see that number 5 out there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He would have been playing outside linebacker for us." And this is my coach on the USA team. That was a good quote, I think. He said, "He'd have been playing outside linebacker for us." So, I mean, that shows you the makeup of Ringo. And the other thing I like about it, and it goes back to when I was over there a few times for bowl practice, the man, the head coach, Kirby Smart, number 16, when they were practicing for the bowl, he had his arm around Ringo as much as he had over Christmas around Mary Beth. Telling you, he was all over that kid, coaching him, getting ready for that bowl game. And he wasn't even playing, but I was really impressed with that, because you got to get your team ready. But, you're thinking ahead. That was And he was showing him technique and doing all that stuff all the time, every time I was over there. So, but we knew last year, Jake gave us a scouting report. Give us what you had coming in number one corner in the country.
Ringo, I think, was actually number 2, if I'm not mistaken, last year. But it was a really close race. I forget who edged him for number 1. But
who was 1?
Let's see.
I'll look it up while you talk.
Yeah,
the thing about Ringo, what you loved is the combination of the size and speed. I mean, it was always evident. You know, you're talking about 6'2.5" and laid down a legitimate laser timed 4.340. You know, so at camp, we stood there and like he got done and the number popped up and we all just like looked around like, holy shit, like did that just happen in front of us? And, you know, I had it, like I said before, I've told this story a lot. I had a chance to go out and see him in Vegas, played all across the field, played on offense, dynamic there, never threw his way on defense. I mean, he was almost a non-factor on defense because he was such a factor. I mean, he took the guy he was covering out of every single play. Incredible returner as well. Just the total package. I mean, everybody knew it from the beginning. And really, I think as big of a pickup as Georgia could have had last year, especially moving into this year with some of the losses that you've had in the defensive backfield.
And he's going to be so much better, even though he got hurt. He's going to be so much better for that because so much of the stuff that can happen to you as an inexperienced young guy is not going to happen to him now because of all the experience he gathered practicing all year. You know what I mean? He's just going to be that much slicker and has really paid his dues. That 1 year of paying his dues has been without it being exposed on the field. You know what I'm saying? So the other thing that's going to happen is because not so much that he's so good, but because we don't have quite the talent at the other corner, we're not going to see as many balls go his way anyhow. They're going to go the other side until the other people can prove it. So, I mean, JT Daniels, he comes up there and looks at the line of scrimmage. He sees him over there, and then he sees these other guys. Although Speed's a good player, and Kimber and Nyland Green, I'm going to go that way a little more myself.
Jake, the top corner was Elias Ricks.
Yeah, edged him by one position, I saw. Yeah, Elias Ricks finished 6th. Keely Ringo finished 7th.
Well, that won't matter because Elias is going to come to Georgia anyway. So
I still come.
Good market. Put it on freezing cold takes if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to tweet it out. I don't want to be busting up freezing cold takes, but if it does come, you heard it here first. No. I know Georgia would love to get him if he ever got into the transfer portal. That would be like their dream come true. I know they're always. I think they got a couple.
Pennies from heaven.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 spots that Georgia still has to fill out on their roster, and you know, I think again we're talking spring football. A lot of guys are going to finish out their year or finish out spring camp, and they're going to finish out their academic semester, and then you're going to see, as we saw with the basketball team, so 3 guys entered the transfer portal yesterday, or up to 3. 2 entered the transfer portal yesterday. They may have some more enter the transfer portal for Georgia's basketball team before it's all said and done. And we are going to see more football players across the nation enter the transfer portal because they basically wait and see how things worked out in spring. That's just that's the way it goes. At the end of spring, when they do those, I guess you call it an eggs interview, where you kind of sit down with your coach after the whole thing's over, and he says, "This is what we see in you, and this is what we see for you, and this is what we expect of you, and this is what we hope for you, and this is your call to action, in the off season before we get to fall camp. This is what we want." Some of those kids are going to like what they hear, some are not, and we're going to see the transfer portal tick up again after spring camp. And of course, at that point, Georgia will be looking to maybe add a player or 2, see what they can get. So I know a lot of people would love to see Elias Ricks leave LSU, but we'll see. Anyway,
let's hear about this recruiting. I've been waiting 50 minutes to hear about.
You're going to have to wait 2 more seconds because I got to mention 2 of our other sponsors. I missed last week. I missed the Pie Day, and it's killing me because talking to Drew French, they sold a ton of pizzas on Pie Day over at your pie, and I didn't get one. And I waited all year for this thing, and I wasn't in town, but it was. I did have a great time, and I'm glad that the folks at Your Pie moved a ton of pizzas. A lot of folks took advantage of the 3-day window there to get the $3.14 pizza. I know that Your Pie Day's over, but it's still a fantastic place to go get dinner. Some locations have the the really big pizza, the 14-inch one. You can, instead of the 10-inch, you can grab one of those. We've tried it. It's fantastic. They have the low carb, the keto friendly, the vegetarian, the meat substitute pizzas. I got a meat substitute pizza for my wife who she likes a lot of those fake meats. And she thought it was fantastic. You know, she doesn't want to hurt the cows or anything like that. So, but sometimes you want meat on your pizza. So she got one of those the other day and it was fantastic. Also want to mention our friends at Academia Brewing Company. This week, we missed the live music yesterday, but today is Trivia Tuesday, so you can go out there and win a $50 Academia gift card, plus a free ride on the Classic City Cycling thing they do out there. You can win dinner with your friends. Wednesdays, kids eat free at Academia Brewing Company. Can't miss that. You know, they'll take care of the kids, so go by there and fantastic food, and they'll feed your kids. Can't beat it. Thursday, they're back to live music. Come by the brewery from 6 to 9 for live music. Have a lot of great beer, have a lot of great food, and enjoy live actual music. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they have beer and biscuit brunch from 10 to 1. I've done that. It is fantastic. You get great beers, you get great Bloody Marys, any of those wonderful drinks that they have out there. And, you know, a great biscuit, I don't want to say buffet, a great biscuit menu. So, hit up the beer and biscuits from our friends at Academia Brewing Company. And our last sponsor, but definitely not our least, is our friends down at DR Construction Maintenance, Ronnie Brown, who is a great sponsor of the show, great member of our UGA Sports family. You definitely have to get by the UGA Sports website and check out Ronnie Brown's comments on the event. Check out DR Construction Maintenance if you were in Liberty, Long, or Bryan counties. Jake, I came in Saturday night on the red eye, got in about 5 a.m., slept for about an hour, and then met you in, where were we, Duluth? Alpharetta? Where were we at?
Technically, I think it's Alpharetta, but yeah.
We were in Alpharetta, 200 plus campers out there, 200 prospects, 40 of which I think had Georgia offers or Georgia was looking at, you know, it had some sort of relation to Georgia. Not all 40 of them showed up, but we did. I think, how many did we talk to? 19, 20?
No, we talked to more like 30 or 35.
30. I'm just thinking how many you and I talked to, but now here's like we had 4 staffers out there. I don't think anybody had more than 2 from any of the other sites. So we had 4 staffers out there talking to people, and we had a truckload of updates at UGASports.com. For the people who are not subscribers to UGASports.com, subscribe. It's 27 cents a day. Give us kind of some of the highlights from this past Sunday's camp.
You know, I think one of the biggest things for me that jumped off the page was the opportunity to talk to Walter Nolan. You're talking about the number 3 player in the nation, a guy that, like Emery Mims, when you walked out on the field, you said, "Who's that guy?"
I did. That was the first thing I asked.
I was like, "Who's that guy?" Looks like he could wander into the NFL Combine and probably not get a lot of questions, just the way he's built. But looks like Georgia really kind of back in the thick of this thing with Walter Nolan, down to a top 10 that came out a month ago at least, said that, Georgia would be now in the revised top 10. He's planning on redoing the list. Bulldogs will be in there. He said Trey Scott's on him every day. Kirby Smart's involved. Tyree West told Paul Maharry that he said, "Mark my words, I'm getting Walter Nolan to come to Georgia." So we'll see. I mean, look, the competition is going to be fierce. But what I always remind people about Walter Nolan, early on in his recruitment, when he started becoming a national name, mentioned Georgia was like a dream school for him. It was a place that he was extremely interested in. There was some hesitation kind of at the beginning. Looks like now, though, all that's kind of in the past. Things are hot and heavy with Georgia and Walter Nolan. Definitely watch that one for sure.
Hey, let me interrupt you here. So Georgia has a commitment from Tyree West, 5-star defensive tackle.
Yes, that's correct.
You had 2 great stories. You actually flew out to Dallas on the day of the event and then flew back that night to catch the Under Armour event out in Dallas, and you spoke to Bear Alexander, Keithian Bear Alexander. You had a great story yesterday. Folks, go to UGASports.com, read this story from his guardian, because a lot of people said, oh, yeah, he's committed for now. I've said, Bear Alexander's committed for now. Folks inside UGA have said he's committed for now. There's the worry that Bear Alexander would decommit, but was it Tony Parks?
Tony Jones.
Tony Jones said,
Mr. Jones.
It's going to be tough for him to decommit because this kid is very, very dialed into Georgia. 2 5-star defensive tackle commits. How does Nolan work into this? Can you pull 3?
Why not? Listen, I mean.
Oh, and they got Mikael Williams?
Oh, well, not yet. But
I'm just saying that they're going hard after him. What's the plan at defensive tackle? How many of these guys can you gather?
Take them all if you can. I mean, don't worry about that, Roddy. Push some kids into the sea if you have to. Get this defensive line class in the door because there's some special talent here. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's stacked. And Trey Scott, that was a name that we talked to a lot of guys about on Sunday. I know you were asking
everybody.
Questions. I was asking the questions.
Offensive lineman, we're talking about him.
Trey Scott is impressing in a major way. He is, and I said this a couple of weeks back, he's emerging, I think, as one of the elite recruiters in the SEC. I think that what you've seen him do with Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt has been a big selling point for these guys, especially at a position where Georgia hasn't had a player drafted since John Jenkins. I remind people of that all the time. This was an uphill battle to kind of reshape Georgia's defensive line, face out in the public. He's done a great job of that. Obviously, you feel like Malik Herring probably will break the streak this year of potential draftee, but it's going off next year with Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. So Trey Scott making an impact on all of these guys, Mikael Williams, Walter Nolan, Tyree West. It's Lebius Overton, LT out of Milton, the 2023 kid who is another freak. I think that really putting themselves in a great spot for some of the top defensive linemen in the nation. And like I said, don't worry about how you fit them in. Just fit them in. Make it happen.
And someone's worried about fitting is but at some point, if you're the 3rd 5-star defensive tackle, you're like, wait a minute. They already got 2. And then you're the 4th. So I was just kind of wondering what they're
about that. I mean, we had a chance to discuss that. And I said, they've got a big class. I mean, it looks like they're going to take several guys up front. He said, look, I want to play alongside the best guys. I want to be next to the best man. He said, I want that guy pushing me every single day. And I think that that's huge for Georgia to be able to sell that possibility that, if we're able to put all these pieces together, it's going to be hard for opposing offenses to stop. And I think kids realize that as well. I mean, it's not a situation of, listen, Walter Nolan could go to Colgate and end up in the NFL if things go to plan. I mean, assuming there's no injuries or whatever, obviously he would be drafted. I think that he realizes he can get the coaching he needs. He can play it alongside great talent. He can play, in prime time, get all the great film he needs, and be around guys that he's comfortable with at Georgia. And I think that that's a big selling point for him as well as a lot of these defensive linemen.
Shout out to Tyree West for doing the saying, look, even though I'm a 5-star defensive tackle, I'm going to bring in another 5-star defensive tackle with me.
No hesitation in that.
Love that kid.
Yeah. Roddy, I wanted to throw it to you on Tyler Booker because you spoke to him for what seemed like half an hour out there while I was running around chasing other kids. You were just posted up talking to Booker, but I know has set his official visit to Georgia, not coming out on that big official visit weekend that I think everybody's looking at in the very first weekend in June, but soon thereafter, that next weekend, he'll be in town. What'd you learn about Booker in that conversation?
Booker started out kind of heavy. I won't say lean, but a lot of people thought he was going to Georgia. Now a lot of people thought he's going to Florida. Now he's kind of more opened up. He talks a lot about Ohio State. He talks about Notre Dame, Penn State. Still hears from Georgia every day. Hears from Florida every day. I don't want to say those are the top 2 teams because my gut feeling is those 2 and Ohio State are really pushing him. He's looking at Penn State. He likes the idea of playing for Franklin. He likes the idea of playing for a black head coach. He says, look, I want to leave a mark. I want to coach. And I think that, that has some, I can make my mark on the program by, supporting others. So he's very socially conscious. He's also very conscious of his brand. One of the advantages Florida has over a lot of these other schools is that name, image, and likeness policy, the law that's going into effect in the state of Florida. He says, Florida is showing me how I will be able to make the most of my name, image, and likeness. They have a plan for me when this law goes through. State of Georgia doesn't have one, and he said that's the one thing they could do is show me how this would work out. He likes the idea of playing for Trey Scott. He said, look, here's another African-American head coach a position coach who, I could play for him and leave my mark on the game. And, basically he knows that his services are such that he will be able to, he'll get a lot from his coach and be able to give back, I'll be able to play for you and help you out. You get me ready for the next level. So he is a very, very bright young man. That's why we had such a long conversation. And people were coming up to him asking about all these different schools, and he would name 3 or 4 coaches on each staff, and their stances and their scouting reports and stuff like that. He is very, very bright, an absolute dynamo of a guy, and just an absolute monster lineman. So Mr. Booker is going to be very, very interesting recruitment to watch.
Obviously we talked to Christian Miller, a guy that got bumped his commitment date, as we mentioned early. He showed up wearing a Georgia hoodie and Florida sweatpants. I've never seen that before. I said, "You're full Jacksonville right now, man." But he's undetermined on his date. He's waiting on those visits now. We got a great front page story up from Chad Simmons on him right now. So go over to UGAsports.com, check that out. We'll have more with him later on this week. Vic Burley was another big guy that a lot of that we were all talking to. Cameron Davis was a guy everybody was talking to. Addison Nichols coming in for that early June visit weekend. One of the top offensive tackles in the nation. I mean, a guy down at GAC, right down the road for the Bulldogs. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. You're talking about Emery Floyd, who has consistently said Georgia's sitting atop his list. He's planning on being here for that big visit weekend, possibly committing, we'll be dropping a top 5 or top 7 on his birthday, April 19th. Georgia will be in the mix there. Michael Daughtry. I mean, listen, it was stacked. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah, we don't have enough time to hit all those kids. So
I got a question for you, Jake. Did you see, we had the Lucky triplets here. Mike Lucky's son is going to be 2023 tight end. Did you see him?
We did. We sure did. Yeah. Actually, I pointed him out to Roddy as he was coming across the field. I'll tell you this, the kid's well built, no question about it, but great hands, I think, too, especially for a young guy like that. I think that he really had a chance going through that gauntlet. Look, I've seen this thing 3 weeks in a row. Almost nobody's finished the gauntlet perfectly when it comes to just, run, turn. He did it, man. So sticky hands there. Love the Lucky kid. I think Georgia in a great spot for him early on in 2023 as well.
Jake, from a PR standpoint, Malachi Starks coming Thursday. If people want to access your coverage, where should they go?
They should probably go to the vault at UGAsports.com, but they can also follow me on Twitter at Roost Recruiting. We'll be out there down to 3 options: Georgia, Clemson, Alabama for him. Told us on Saturday he's privately down to, on Sunday, he's privately down to 2 options. My guess is, and he did not tip his hand here, but this is just, reading tea leaves. I think it's Georgia and Clemson going into this thing. The Tigers are making a strong push. And I'll tell you this, I don't know that the kid has decided yet. He said on Sunday, I haven't decided. He said, I don't know where I'm going to go. I believe him. I believe him too. And I think that it's going to come down to those 2 schools. I give Georgia the edge personally, just because I have for a while, but Clemson not making it easy to close this one out. And he said, look, when I commit, I'm done. He said, I want to take visits, but if they tell me that I can't, okay, that's fine too. He said, I want to be where I'm at. I want to help build where I am. And so definitely one to watch for Thursday. We'll have full coverage for you on UGA Sports.
And will that be on this YouTube channel as well?
Well, it should be, assuming. I mean, you have to believe so, but you never know how these civic center.
What time is it?
6:30 p.m. on Thursday. You never know how these Wi-Fi situations work out there in these civic centers and such. So fingers crossed we will be live with it. Hope to get maybe we can drag Roddy out of the house one night and get him out there to do a little something as well.
I did my one camp of the year. It's funny. I just used the coach rule of recruiting. Basically went out to the camp, and I hadn't seen a lot of these guys because not getting to go out last year and do the camp. Well, I did a couple camps. I think I did Orlando and New Orleans last year, and then it shut down. So we didn't get a chance to see these guys a lot of times. So walking out and seeing guys like Nolan for the first time, I'd never met him before. Didn't know Tyler Booker, I'd never spoken to him before. But basically was watching this big, good-looking tight end run across the gauntlet, catch everything, and I'm like, who's that? I start flipping through it, and Jake's like, that's Lucky. I'm like, should have known. Basically, using the Coach Dunn rule of prospect evaluation. If one guy makes you look him up because he just looks bigger and better than everybody else, and your grandma can point him out and say, that's the star of the team. That's what I did all day Sunday. I'm like, who's that guy? They're like, oh yeah, that's the 5-star offensive tackle. Who's that guy? That's a 5-star defensive back. Who's that? 4-star wide receiver. Even in a situation where you have 300-400 of the best players in the nation, those guys stand out. And we interviewed a ton of them. So check out UGASports.com to get that information and find out the latest. It's a lot of stuff.
We're just scratching the surface when it comes to our coverage from that. We've been posting most.
Yeah, somebody needs to do a little more work faster.
We've been posting most of the national stories the last couple of days.
Last question, Jake, was Jay Johnson there? Jake
Johnson. I didn't. No, I don't believe Jake was there on Saturday. No, he was not on the list anyway that we were given. So it was. I'll be honest with you. And honestly, you could have walked out there and you would have been lost in the fray. I don't know that I'd have been able to pick you off. I was going to miss some players regardless. So it was that loaded of a field.
He was probably down watching LSU practice.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But like I said, tons more to come from Under Armour Atlanta. Make sure to get over to UGAsports.com and be following along.
Yep. We ran a little long today, but we had a lot to cover. Of course, that's mostly my fault. So that's just what I do. Anyway, I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Be sure to catch us next Tuesday at noon. We will have another show for you. We will have another week of Georgia spring practice to cover, and we will go over some of the stories, the recruiting updates that Jake's going to put out between now and then. We will touch on those as well. We will also, as always, be taking your questions. Thanks to everybody that was putting in comments in the YouTube section. Sorry I didn't get to those, but we really appreciate all of our YouTube commenters. And if you would, leave us a review on Google Play and iTunes and all the good stuff. We really appreciate those. Those help in our algorithms of this being a suggested show for other people who are interested in Georgia football. We really appreciate all the people that share this. It means a lot to us. And glad to be back. Glad to be talking football with you guys, even Jake. So it means a lot. So tune in next Tuesday. We will see you then. And until then, we appreciate it.